The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
A very good morning and welcome on to the Morning Majlis. Yes, now we're going to be taking a bit of a recruitment turn right here on the Morning Majlis. We're talking all things job hunting. We're talking all things improving your CV. It is the most difficult thing to do when you're deciding, okay, if I want to refresh my CV or create my own CV or even restart it, what do I do? What needs to be on there? How contemporary can I be? Let's talk 21st century CVs at the moment. Amir Reza, who is a recruitment specialist, has joined us in the studios. Amir, very good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Oh, good. Now, Amir, this is going to be a very important question here. When it comes to writing a CV nowadays, what is the most important and crucial thing at the moment?
Well, there's a lot of things that are important, but I think it's quite important for people to firstly understand, where the CV goes. And I think most people don't really kind of appreciate, where does the CV go? You see a job, you want to apply for it, you send your CV. What happens to it? And I think, definitely that's something that we should address to kind of get the listeners to understand what that process is. And of course, I will discuss, what the ideal CV writing should be and what people should do. There's so many mistakes that people make, unfortunately, and they kind of, hopeful, desperate, looking for work. They may have been out of a job, and then they'll do up this fancy CV, or they think it's fancy. They'll send it off to a client, get absolutely zero response, and then get mad at the industry, get mad at this, the everything. They get frustrated naturally.
Yeah.
And so I think it's firstly it's important to understand what the process is. Once you've understood that, then you can tailor make a CV that is going to be applicable to where you're sending it. And this, I think, is very important. Let me firstly address some of the issues that personally, as a recruiter, I face with people applying for CVs.
Okay.
And this, I could go on for hours with this. So,
yes, well, I think I'm
going to try and keep it as I don't know, as organized as I can. But basically, this is some of the frustrating aspects that we face as recruiters. So we'll post a job advert on the various different job boards, right? It could be a website, could be LinkedIn, could be wherever. You get literally within a matter of, 20 minutes where I would put up a job advert, I would get over 1,000 applicants.
Seriously?
Literally. And so you kind of go, oh my God, I've got 1,000 relevant, fantastic applicants. Wow, lucky me, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case. You get a lot of hopeful applicants who just kind of serial appliers, if you like, who just go click, 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 and click every single apply button. I mean, naturally, they're desperate maybe, or they need to feed their kids or whatever the case is. But ultimately, what that does is it ruins their reputation, because if you're applying for a position which doesn't apply to you and you're just hoping to get noticed, you get noticed in a negative way. You get noticed in the wrong way, where you clog up that recruiter's inbox and they're just going to get frustrated. And if they see your face or they see your CV popping up in every single position that they've put up, they're going to do the exact opposite and get frustrated, just delete you altogether. So it's important to firstly apply for the right positions, but I guess we'll get to that later. But going back on, I deviate. But getting back onto the topic of CV writing, look, a lot of people have to understand that I think statistically it says that each CV gets about 6 seconds of view time.
Yeah.
Right? And bearing in mind that I just mentioned, if I put up an ad, I get over 1,000 applicants. Do you think any human being is going to sit there, going through each CV, spend 10, 15 minutes reading it? Of course not. You'll be doing that all day.
And this is the thing. When you often apply on these platforms or portals, you've got to go through a whole Q&A section before you then even apply or would submit parts of your CV as well. Does that make a difference at all? Does that weed out people that don't have relevant experience?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, this is the beauty of technology, where obviously, you apply to somebody, we obviously pay for a lot of these job boards. And they have a filtration system where if the person doesn't match the criteria to, you can make it as specific as you want. So it'll literally weed out all of the kind of people that are not relevant, and out of 1,000 people, you'll find that only 10 people actually matching the job that suits you. So you're wasting your time essentially, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately the way to be able to, going back to the CV writing point, if you bear in mind that you've got, that human, let's just say it's not a job board that you've applied to, but an individual's inbox or email, you managed to get a HR manager's email address and you sent your CV to that person. Even then, that person is only going to look at your CV for 3 to 6 seconds. I mean, that's all the time you've got. And some of the CVs that I've seen are shocking. I mean, you've got these fancy borders, colorful, emojis, and colorful font, and that's italic, and that one's big, and that one's small. You're confusing the reader. You want to make it as clear and as concise and as as easy on the viewer, so the person, when they look at it in those few seconds, they pick up the relevant information that they need, and they can then shortlist you and go, yes, relevant, put you on the pile, where they're going to then spend more time reviewing your CV. The other thing that people do is they write, they put the details, the job description of what they've done. They'll write a whole essay. No one's got time to read that. This is very important to kind of bear in mind that that person wants to see those direct, relevant things that is applicable to that job, and then shortlist you. So use bullet points and literally just the ideal CV, in my opinion, is a clear black and white CV where you've got the title, the dates, you've got the name of the company, and then you've got maybe 6-7 bullet points underneath of the actual description of what you've done.
Okay, really, really great tips there. We're going to continue with Amir Reza, an HR expert, talking about CV writing tips, how people are applying for jobs now on digital platforms, and some networking tips on the way. Taking your questions on 4215. This is the Morning Majlis on Pulse 95.
Join the conversation with the Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Welcome back to the program. Great to have you with us as we are in conversation with Amir Reza, an HR expert. Thanks so much for sticking around.
Pleasure.
We've had a few text messages in because before the break we were talking about CVs and your recommendations for people who are job hunting at the moment. You said minimalist, least amount of information, and stick to the relevant information. So I'd like to address that just a little bit deeper because we have had a text in on 4215 saying, I've been unemployed for 9 months and I feel like I'm losing hope. I have quite an un-Western name. Would it help if I changed my name on my CV in order to get an interview? It's a horrible question to be asking, but you speak to recruiters, you work in recruitment, and you speak to employers.
Yep.
Is this something that sort of happens in the market? Is it necessary to put your date of birth and your picture on your CV?
I mean, yes, for sure. It definitely, there's certain things that from country to country or area to area change. I think in this region, it's very important to have a clear picture and a professional picture. I mean, I've had people, take selfies in crazy places, in like a nightclub, for instance, and they put it on their CV, or guys by the pool with glasses, and you're like, this is a representation of who you are. It's a professional representation of who you should be and what you're representing, and so therefore it should be as professional as possible. So a nice, clear, professional picture, usually on the top right-hand side of the CV is my recommendation. Your name, your contact details are very important. A lot of people put their email and their contact number at the bottom of the CV. I think it should be very accessible or very easy for people to see how to contact you and access you. And then, coming down, as I was mentioning earlier, each, and a lot of people make this mistake of trying to ram everything into like 1 page or 2 pages, where if you're a 50-year-old person and you've done X number of years and you've been all over the place, how can you possibly squeeze all of those years of experience into there is no rule in that respect. So I think as long as you don't overwrite and you don't underwrite, I think the biggest important to try to visualize is, imagine you're going fishing, and I'm not a fisherman myself, but I think everyone understands the concept of when you go fishing, you take your hook, and on the hook you want to put a bait, a piece of juicy bait. When you throw that piece of bait in the ocean or in the water, only if it's a nice juicy piece of bait will it then attract a fish. Your CV is similar to a piece of bait on a hook. Excuse the analogy, but that comes into mind. But
yeah.
If you've got if your CV is the first thing that is seen by any prospective employer, and so in response to this call or this person who's sending a text, changing your name isn't really going to make any difference, because even if you put a Western name and call yourself John Smith, when you rock up to the interview, they're still going to see who you are, and they're going to see your name. And if anything, it's going to have an adverse effect, because they're going to think you lied. And no one wants to hire a deceiving or a deceptive person. So I think be as honest as possible, but make sure that that the way you're representing yourself is in a correct way. And if this person has been looking for work for the past 9 months, I think there definitely needs to be something that needs to be addressed in your approach, in your CV, in the way that you're essentially advertising yourself. And this is the most important thing, and this is hopefully something that I can help you guys with whilst I'm here.
Right, Amir, now we'll build on this, because you said, for people coming from abroad, from different cultures and different nationalities, for example, there's a different style of CV writing, and people say 1 page or 2 page, or having a picture there, or mentioning a nationality, or mentioning a few things. So if you were to break it down and say, okay, now you've got the important information there, but make sure that it's 1 page or 2 pages. If you were to give a sort of a quick summary in terms of what the perfect and ideal and eye-catching that bait of a CV would look like, what would you say?
I think an ideal CV for me, and this is something as a recruiter, we reformat CVs. So the way that I train my staff when we do a CV is, we have it in one unique font. Try to avoid italics, but if you have to, you have to. But keep the font to one size. Maybe make the title slightly bigger just so they stand out, bolden some of the headers, but bullet points are crucial. You need to have bullet points to highlight the responsibilities that you've done. Don't go overboard. You're going to bore the person. Don't forget they've got 6 seconds to see. Now, another thing to please bear in mind, listeners, is you have to understand the job of the person who is looking at your CV. It's usually a recruitment consultant such as myself, or a HR manager, or an in-house recruiter. Now, the way that process works is that HR manager has got a division manager or a department manager who has come to their HR department and said, let's use sales as an example. The sales director has come to HR and said, I need a sales manager. These are the credentials. This is what I need. Go out there into the market and search it for me. That person is ultimately following a guideline which has been set to them by their manager. Similar in a recruitment consultant, I've got a client, my client has given me a set guideline as to what I need to find. And so based on that guideline, I can only work within the parameters that I've been given. And so usually, the HR manager isn't going to know the technical ins and outs of maybe, an IT director, but they know enough based on the job description they've been given to look out for certain keywords. Now, if you're an IT person and you get, the HR manager sees your CV and you've got way too much technical jargon on there, it's going to go over her head his head, and she's not going to see it. So just bring out the key bullet points, the attributes, the things that you've done. That person will then be able to see and go, okay, this matches the job description I've been given. Let me shortlist that and give that to the manager. Okay,
really, really great information there, Amir Reza. Stay with us here on the Morning Majlis on Pulse 95, taking your questions on 4215. We're talking networking and job hunting tips this morning. We'll be back after a short break.
Pulse 95. The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
This is Pulse 95. Welcome back to the program. Yes, we're talking CV writing tips. We're talking all things recruitment and what to do. Now, you've written a perfect CV. Now, you've got the interview call. You're going into your interview with your preparation. What needs to be done? So Amir Reza, who is the Manager Director of Harmony Connections, and he's also a HR expert, he's going to be talking to us about preparing for the interviews. As you said, it's not the more information, the juicy information there is, and you've just got to, on your CV, and you've just got to be prepared for all things the company that you're applying for.
Sure. And I think this is a huge error that a lot of people make, is having the lack of preparation in going for the interview. In a market where it's so saturated and getting that interview, that FaceTime is so difficult, I think people don't prepare enough for that in order to make sure they stand out and that they essentially get the job. More often than not, we obviously arrange a lot of interviews for our candidates, and I make sure I meet everybody that I see, and they're very confident at the job that they're doing. They're very confident and able to do their work. But when it comes to doing interviews, a lot of people get nervous. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And they kind of think they're going to ace it. They're going to go there and kind of, happy-go-lucky will make it happen, when that's just not the way to do it. I mean, you need preparation. You need to do some role plays with your friends, with your spouse, with whoever prior to going there. I mean, we ensure that we there's a document that we send out to all of our candidates, which gives a list of preparations and things that they need to do. There's so many websites out there that if you type in preparation for interview, you'll get a list of potential questions. You'll get a list of all sorts of different things that you should do. And people do really need to invest a bit of time in ensuring that they're prepared. You need to research the company, you need to research the job, you need to research the name of the person. I mean, LinkedIn is a huge tool that you can use to pretty much find about any information about anyone. So as soon as you get the confirmation of the interview, find out the name of the interview, go on their LinkedIn, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, try to find something that you might personally relate to that person with, or you link with. So when you go there in the interview, you say something that sounds, or that is, that you can, you're dealing with human beings at the end of the day, right? So say if you, for instance, are into sailing. I don't know, you've been traveling, and you find out that this person that you're going to go meet has also into traveling. You've been to the same place. It's an icebreaker. You go to the interview and you'll say something, and you'll say something about that person. So that person will ultimately be very impressed that you've done your homework, you've done your research, not just about the position in the company, but also about that individual.
And one thing that I want to ask you about that is that you may have done all of this research, but I think culturally there'll be a lot of people that will be thinking from a strategic point of view, I want to go into this interview and I want to make sure that I come across as somebody that follows instructions to a T, that I fit in, that I can blend in and basically execute their instructions. There'll be other people, perhaps from different cultural backgrounds, that will think, okay, I've got to highlight all of the skills that I know can bring value to this company, and I've got to sell myself, for the next hour or so. What would be your advice to candidates, a group of them listening out there, to be able to assess what type of company they might be applying for, and how to approach that interview strategically? Do they need to stand out, or do they need to blend in?
That's a good question, but I think in all cases you need to try and stand out. I think, irrespective of the cultural diversity or the cultural mix or whatever the case is, again, because the market is so saturated, if you're competing with so many different people, so you have to stand out. And this is why your CV needs to be amazing. This is why your preparation needs to be on point. This is why you need to investigate and do as much kind of background work as you can before you even, before you do anything. And this is why I was saying earlier, my annoyance with people are just click and apply without actually doing a bit of research. It's, I get frustrated by people saying, oh, I've been unemployed for a year, 9 months, 6 months. How is that even possible? I mean, it's impossible for you to be unemployed for that long. I don't care how bad the market is. It's impossible for you to be. There's definitely something that you're doing wrong. You're not investigating, you're not researching enough, you're not taking enough time. I had one guy send me a CV consistently every single day for 10 days. I just got annoyed. I blocked him in the end. I'm like, what are you doing? You obviously don't care. You obviously haven't paid enough attention to the fact that you keep repeatedly sending me this CV. Again, you're dealing with humans, and so how would you like to be treated? How would you appreciate when someone stands, to stand out from the rest of the crowd? Another, thing that another advice that I would like to give people as far as looking for work, and I know it is very frustrating, but ultimately you said something very good on it, and that is that you do need to stand out from the rest. How do you do that? How do you stand? How do you sell yourself? And how do you make sure that you've and a lot of I deviate, but a lot of the thing I just remembered, you mentioned that you've got half an hour to 45 minutes, which is your interview. Let's say you got the interview, you got half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. That is the chance that you're going to get. You've got that time to shine. You've got that time to impress this person about who you are, what you've done, your achievements. And achievements are often not highlighted in CVs and when people are interviewed, because they think, oh, I sound like I'm showing off or I'm bragging. Who cares? Brag. This is your time to brag. You know what I mean? If there's any time to brag, that's the time. But not in a gloaty way, but in a factual way.
Okay, great. I mean, there's so much to get through here. We've got to wrap up with Amir Reza. It's just been great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's that was an interesting discussion. So if you've missed out on this discussion, you can still catch up with it. SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. This is where you'll get to catch up with all the interviews that we've done on the Morning Majlis. Amir Reza, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you for having me.
And we hope that we've addressed most of your questions. Do stay tuned to the Morning Majlis. We've got plenty more to talk about.
Pulse 95. The Morning Majlis, sitting down for in-depth interviews with game changers and industry insiders. Brought to you by Al Bait Resort.